What's going on, everyone? Train Freak here, and today we are going to continue where we have left off from last week with train number 62. So last week we built our train at Brinkley, and now it is coming into the town of Hickory Ridge. And so we have quite a few cars that we're going to set out, but we also have some cars that we need to pick up first. So we are going to be picking up 4 cars, and then setting out 6 cars. And then to fast forward a little bit, one of the cars that we're picking up is actually going to be set out at the next town. So the very first thing that we are going to want to do is stop our train, of course. But once we stop, and we want to make sure that we don't foul the switches, so we're going to stay behind that. But we're going to cut away from the whole train, so that way we can start the pickup process. We could go ahead and set cars out in, but it would just make the process that much more difficult. So we're just going to go ahead and break away and make our way to the very first pickups. So the interesting thing about Hickory Ridge is 2 of the industries are going to be on the front side of the locomotive, and the other 2 industries are going to be on the back side of the locomotive. Now, since we're using a EMD GP9, these locomotives are set for short hood forward. So it's going to make sense in this scenario that we pick up the cars that are on the long hood side of the locomotive first, and then pick up the cars that are going to be on the short hood side. Now, right now you heard that I've got the bell going, but I did not blow the horn, and we are in the middle of a railroad grade crossing. Because this is an industrial area, we are not using horn signals, we're just going to be using our bell, but we're also being restricted to 5 miles per hour. So it gives the engineer plenty of time to stop if a vehicle decides to try to run in. Alright, so our locomotive is going to stop short, just to make sure that the coupler is open on our boxcar that we're picking up, and of course to make sure that it's on the track. And this is our very first pickup, which is our Green Bay and Western 40-foot boxcar, and it is empty. This track that we're picking it off of is for Feinstein's Brewery. This is track 1, and that is the track where they will be delivering grain. Once I get my building kit built and put in place, that track arrangement might change just a little bit. So now that we picked up our first car, we are going to make our way to our second pickup. So now as we are backing down, we are going to take the double slip and go to the next industry, which is the Passmore Gas Company. Now originally the railroad had a single slip here, and it would require the locomotive in that car to actually go down to the main line and then switch up onto track 1 and then back in. And so now with them putting in the double slip, that just makes it to where they don't have to get on the main line. So like before, we're going to stop shy of our tank car, make sure the coupler is open, make sure it's on the track, and then we will couple onto it and pull it out. And this is our Amoco Fuels 40-foot tank car. Now, and it's empty, so if we was to pull this back on our train and it was a loaded tank car, FRA rule states that this tank car has to be the 5th car either from a locomotive or an occupied caboose. If the train is not long enough to make it to where that car has 4 buffer cars in the front and at least 4 buffer cars in the back, then that tank car would have to be in the dead middle of the train. And then the crew in both the locomotive and in the caboose would have to know that there is hazardous materials on their train. So basically we're going to be pulling it into track 2 to drop these 2 cars off, and then we will start doing the runaround motion, so that way our locomotive is connected to our tank car. And then we will end up picking 2 other cars up from our next industry. Alright, so here we have a 3-way turnout, and we are going to take the left diverging track, which takes us down to this little bitty short lead, which I call a locomotive's lead. And it's mainly just so that way the locomotives can perform runarounds on cars on either track 1 or preferably track 2. Now the reason why I say preferably on track 2 is because that 3-way turnout for the right diverging leg and the straight leg of it goes to our next industry, which is the Juicy J's Meat Company. Alright, so now we are connected to our 2 cars, and we will start the shove back down to Juicy J's Meat Company to do our next 2 pickups. Alright, so our first pickup is going to be on Juicy J's Track 2. We have a 40-foot cotton belt boxcar that is empty. And as always before, we will stop shy of the boxcar, make sure it's on the track, and also to make sure that coupler is empty. Now this boxcar is actually going to be under the building, so a locomotive is not allowed up under there, so it does require a buffer car if needed to go under it to pick up and spot any cars that go in this section of the building. Alright, so now we got our box car, and now we're gonna go down Juicy J's Track 1 and pick up our Wilson Car Lines reefer that is also empty. Of course, we're going to stop before, make sure coupler's open, we're on track, and connect. So once I get this building finished, the reefer cars are actually going to be inside the building. So same rules apply. Locomotive's not allowed in. It will have to have at least a car to connect to, so that way the locomotive's not going into the building for coupling and uncoupling. Alright, so now we have our 4 pickups, and we are going to make our way back down to the main line. In order to get on the main line, the crew in the locomotive has to contact dispatch to make sure that the main line is clear, so that way it can connect to its train to pick up the cut of cars that needs to be set out. But unfortunately, this crew did not get clearance. So dispatch is letting this train, which is the merchandise service, it's a southbound manifest express, have priority. And so of course you're seeing it's having to jump from track 2 over to track 1, since our local is occupying part of track 2. Now that hotshot manifest is out of the way, our local now has clearance to go on track 2. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to connect to our train and uncouple the cars that we need for setouts, and then we will shove those back in. Now once our boxcar clears the switch, we're going to stop, get the switch thrown, and then now we are going to go ahead and start backing our whole train up into this industrial complex. Now ironically, that very last car is going to be ended up going to the Shack of Sit Furniture Company. So instead of backing this cut of cars into either the track 1 or track 2 of the industrial area, we're just going to go ahead and just back it straight up the ladder. And then of course that Rock Island car right there will be the car that we're going to cut off, and we'll just leave those 6 cars on the ladder, and then take our 4 pickups and put those back on main track number 2. So now what we're going to do is just drop our 4 cars off on track 2. We're not going to go ahead and shove them all the way back and connect it to the rest of the train. We can do that once we are finished doing all the setouts. But we're just mainly wanting to get it, out of the way off of those 2 crossovers, just in case. While we're doing our setouts, if another train is coming by, we're not in the way. And so it leaves 3 legs of the track open. Just like you saw the merchandise service come through and having to switch off of track 2 onto track 1. Alright, now that we dropped those off, we would still have to get clearance from dispatch, which we did, to be able to go past the crossover, or which would be a signal. But now we're basically just going to go on, we're going to connect to the 6 cars, and we're going to go ahead and shove that very last car into the Shack-A-Sit Furniture Company. Now this one needs to go to the left bay. So basically we're going to have to shove that car all the way over to the left side. So our 40-foot boxcar today is carrying textiles that they will use, or more or less the fabric that they will use to make furniture such as chairs and sofas. Now, so that way we don't have to get on the main, we're going to go ahead and take the double slip over towards Passmore Gas. And what we're going to end up doing, we've got our cars kind of out of order. So the first 2 cars need to go to Feinstein's, which does require the runaround. The next 2 cars end up going to Juicy J's Meat Company, which does not require a runaround. And then we've got the tank car here on the very end that also requires a runaround. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to take our tank car and put it on the industry track 1. And then we're going to take the rest of our cars and put them on the track 2. And then we will pick our tank car back up and connect those to the cars on the other side. So basically we're making the tank car run around the other 4 cars in our consist. Now we have to do this because if we let the tank car there, then we wouldn't have an empty track to be able to do the runaround. So it just makes sense just to go ahead and do a little bit of what we call blocking, and then it just makes the switching that more fluent once you get stuff in the right order of the way that you need to work your industries. Alright, so now we are backing our cars onto track 2, and I should be able to fit it in between the turnout and that grade crossing back there. I like to try to keep my grade crossings open, but sometimes you just can't do that. Alright, so now we got to go and grab our tank car. And then we can start doing the rest of our setouts. Alright, so we got the rest of our train picked up, and we're going to go ahead and spot out our first boxcar. This is a cotton belt boxcar that has empty cans that are going to go to Juicy J's meat track number 2. So that way they've got something to put the meat in to ship out to the local markets. So we're going to spot this car in under the overhang, and then we will uncouple and work on spotting the next car, which will be that Wilson Car Lines reefer. And of course on track 1 we will be spotting our 40-foot Wilson Car Lines reefer that is carrying dressed meats. And for those who do not know what dressed meats are, it's just basically meats that come straight from the butcher or the slaughterhouse. Alright, so now our last 3 cars, we got 2 box cars and a tank car. Now these are all going to be required for the locomotive to run around, since they are on the opposite end of the yard ladder. Alright, now that our locomotive has completed its runaround, it's going to go ahead and shove that tank car down to the Passmore Gas Company. And this tank car is loaded with a LPG, or otherwise known as liquid petroleum gas. And of course this is a hazardous or a hazmat car, but as long as we're just doing switching within the industrial complex and we're going at the slow speeds that we are, no buffer car is required. So we're going to go ahead and spot this car right there in front of the unloading facility. And then this car is provided by the Navy Gas and Supply Company out of Denver, Colorado. Now we've got our last two cars, and they are both going to go to Feinstein's Brewery. So we're going to go ahead and pull up the ladder and go like we're going to the Shack-A-Sit Furniture Company. And we will back those cars in its respective tracks. The track section between the Shack-A-Sit Furniture and that first turnout that we'll be coming off of is long enough for one locomotive and two 40-foot cars. If we had a 40-foot and a 50-foot car, then we would have to spot one car at a time because the locomotive is not allowed to go under the overhang of the Shack-A-Sit Furniture Company. Alright, so the first car we're going to be dropping off is this 40-foot Rock Island box car. It's loaded with grain, and it's going to take the bottom track, which is Feinstein's Brewery 1, and that is to drop off more grain to make more beer. And then our locomotive will pull up and take our cotton belt box car that is loaded with crates and drop that off on track 2, or the track behind our Rock Island car. And like I said before, once I get the building built, this track arrangement very well could change just a little bit. Now that we have disconnected our last car, we are going to be heading down the ladder and to reconnect to the rest of our train. Our work in Hickory Ridge is done. However, the work for train 62 still continues. Alright, so now we're going to connect to our train, or the first cut of cars, and then of course we'll have to connect to the next cut of cars. And some of you are probably like, dude, you're connecting a tanker to your locomotive. Keep in mind, FRA states that if there is hazardous materials, you require at least 4 buffer cars. However, that tanker is empty, therefore it is no longer considered hazardous. So an empty tank car or a tank car that is carrying non-hazardous commodities can be right up next against the locomotive. So now we are going to be leaving Hickory Ridge, and we are going to go to everyone's favorite town, Weiner. Welcome to downtown Weiner, where we got our train going through the grade crossing. And check it out, we've got the Shack-A-Sit Furniture Company showroom right there off to the right side. And we've got a dog in the back of this truck that loves to rail fan. Now that we're going through Weiner, we've got one more car we need to drop off. And we ended up picking up this box car from Juicy J's Meat Company. It was a cotton belt 40-foot box car. And Riceland is now asking for that car because they want to load it up with grain. So it's the third car in our consist. And we are going to go ahead and disconnect it from the Wilson Car Lines reefer car. We're going to pull our train up and we are going to back it in. Alright, so that is the very last car that we are spotting or picking up on this train. So we're going to go ahead and connect back to the rest of the train, and train 62 will make its way on to Jonesboro, which will be the end of the line, and that crew will be finished with that job. So as the train is going to be making its way out, for those who are not subscribed, feel free to do so and fill in that bell if you want to be notified on any future upcoming videos, including layout updates, rail fans, software tutorials, and including operations, which we're doing today. And then for everyone who is subscribed or not subscribed, please hit that thumbs up. It really helps the channel out. And then lastly but not least, thank you to all of my Patreon members and my YouTube channel supporters. And thanks to those who have purchased items off my Teespring store and those who have sent one-time donations through paypal.me. Your help does go a long way. Other than that, happy railroading.